This is the first shir that was given over this week in the yeshiva. The Gemara had a difficulty as to where the kinyan was, since we see it's a davar shelo ba'olam kefil. So how can you acquire kefil with a davar shelo ba'olam? The Gemara answered that the acquisition must have been at the beginning, the original Metzia, the original handing over. Problem with that, if that's true what Rav Zera asked, well, then he must acquire the gazizos and vlados. He must also acquire the offspring and the wool. Why? Because he acquired the animal from the very beginning. And that can't be true because the Brisa says that it's not true. You do not acquire the gazizos and vlados. So the first answer that Gemara gave was that Rav Zera, we have to qualify what the rabbis said. The rabbis put in a condition that you do not acquire the gazizos and vlados. The second answer that the Gemara gave was that according to Rava, who says that the kinyan happened limafreya, well, it did not happen limafreya completely. It just happened that the original deal was that the rabbis say these people have in mind that at the time of the acquisition, if the animal gets stolen, we'll make a deal that it will be acquired by the shomer a moment before the theft. Now, if it was acquired a moment before the theft, there wouldn't be any offspring to worry about, and that solves the problem. Rashi comes along and explains that when the rabbis made out as if he said to him that he will acquire it a moment before, that original deal had to happen at the time of the Metzia. We made a deal that he would acquire it a moment before it was stolen. The Marasha comes along and doesn't like this. He says, why do you have to go back in time to make that deal? It's as if the rabbis said that he said to him a moment before it was stolen, he acquired the animal. Why do you have to go back to the original deal, the Marasha asks. The Marasha brings a proof to this idea from the next stuff in the case where the original owner died, and now we're dealing with the sons. The Chakira over there, the investigation over there is, do these shomrim get from the sons? Do we say that you get the kefil, part of getting the kefil is because you did a favor for the father, and therefore that's why you get the kefil, besides the fact that you pay? Or no, it's really just dependent on the money. It doesn't matter whether or not. And that will make enough of mean a practical difference by the sons, because the sons you never did a favor for, and the father you did. So also there we'd have to say that the acquisition occurred a moment, according to the second sheet at least, a moment before the theft. It's impossible to say that the sons made a deal with these shomrim at the time of the handing over. Why? Because at the time of the handing over, the father handed it over. They weren't around. It was the father's shomer. So there's no way for us to go back in time the way that Rashi said we went back in time. Comes along the Pnei Yeshua to save Rashi. He explains that Rashi was forced to go back to the original deal because Rashi holds that when the rabbis say Naaseh ka'omerlo, as if he said to him, that's an umde in das. In other words, the rabbis are saying it's really like he said to him. We're assuming that the acquisition happened through the das of the Baal. So therefore we are saying that really was his das, his actual das. So it has to go back to the original deal, because the Baal never knows when the thing is going to be stolen. Don't forget, the deal that they made was the acquisition was going to happen just before the thing was stolen. So they don't know when it's going to be stolen, and not only that, there's no interaction between the shomer and the other guy, so there was no interaction. So we have to have actual das at the time of the deal. That's why Rashi pushes back to the time of the original deal. What do we do with the Gemara on the next daf? The next Pnei Yeshua explains, Adarabah, the next daf is a raya. Because then we would just be able to say that the children agree at a later time, and you wouldn't even have the Chakira. It would be obvious that it would work. It turns out that Rashi lines up with the Ritva and the Rashba. That the original concept of Naaseh Omer, the rabbi superimposing this idea, is as if they said, really has to do with a das makne, the actual das makne. That's where the kinyan occurs. The Marasha, on the other hand, we can line up with the Meiri, who holds you don't have to have actual das, you just have das in general. In other words, it is this noach lo. It makes sense that a man would like to receive the original animal and give away his kefah. That's the das of a regular person, and the rabbis just superimpose what a person would like in general, but not specific. Yeah, this is the second shir that was given this week. The Gemara has a difficulty, and that is, where is the kinyan of the kefil? It's a davar shelo ba'olam. The kefil is something that future payment doesn't exist now. So the Daf Lamed Dawad Amar Aleph, Rava answers that we wanted to say that the kinyan happened limafreya. The kinyan happened at the very beginning, at the time of the Metzia, and then after the animal was stolen, we say that he would acquire it from the very beginning. And that was a deal that was made from the very beginning according to the rabbis. The rabbis say, Naaseh Komerlo, it says, if he said to him. And that's the deal. Now, on that, Reb Zera has a difficulty. The difficulty is, if this was true, then the shomer, the guy guarding the animal, would have acquired also the gazizos of Vlados, also the wool and the Vlados of the entire time period which the shomer the animal. Because he really now owns the animal in Mafreya from the time it was handed over to him. And if he had the animal for a couple of years or so, he would now get those children that came out of that animal, those baby goats that came out of the animal. What's the problem with that? The problem is that there's a brisa clearly stating that he does not get the gazizos and Vlados. So why not? So Reb Zera answers his own difficulty by saying, no, the rabbi said that he acquires the animal and he himself does not acquire the gazizos and Vlados. So the brisa now lines up with Rava, according to Reb Zera. The second answer that the Gemara itself gives is as an alternative to Rava. Rava never said that the acquisition was acquired from the very beginning. Rather, the deal was that if in the future this thing gets stolen and the shomer pays for the animal, he will acquire the animal a second before it was stolen. And that l'chora eliminates the problem of gazizos and Vlados, because there were no offspring a second before the animal was stolen. That solves the problem that way. So now the Gemara says, "My benai, what is the practical difference between these two answers?" And the answers that the practical difference is the kusha de Rev Zera. According to the first opinion, you have the kasha Rev Zera as what do you do with the gazizos and Vlados? Because you'd acquired it from the very beginning. And that forces us to come on to the answer that even the rabbis included this tanai, this condition in the original deal. And the second my benai practical difference is if the animal is an agam. An agam is a makom hefker, a swamp, for example. Let's say the animal was in a swamp, and a second before it got stolen. So according to the second answer, the acquisition happened second before it got stolen. Now, where's the Maisa Kinyan? The Maisa Kinyan had to be a Kinyan Chatzer. He had to acquire it, his Chatzer, his area, the Shomer's place, had to acquire it. But if this animal happened to be in an agam, swampland, or some kind of hefker place, a place where there's no ownership, so then there would be no way to acquire it. The Rosh happens to say on this that it's better the first answer, because if this answer merely makes an akimta in the Mishnah, it makes it the Mishnah is talking about a limited cases and does not include the case of an agam. Now comes along the Maram Shif, and he says, what's the difference between these two different shitas? It comes that there's a difference in halacha. Why? Because according to the shita that says the original condition was laid down by the rabbis that he will not acquire the offspring, so that would mean even after the theft, the offspring would not be acquired. What are we talking about? The time sequence would run like this. The animal was given over to the shomer. The shomer watched the animal, and the animal got stolen. After the animal got stolen, well, then the shomer paid for it. What happened then? They still didn't find the animal. And maybe for a year or two went by, and the animal had offspring. And then they find the animal, and then they get the kefil, and the kefil goes to the shomer. Now, whose offspring is that? According to the first shita, the offspring will never belong to the shomer. Why? Because that was a condition laid down by the rabbis from the very beginning. But according to the second shita, that says that the kinyan happened a minute before the animal was stolen, well, the offspring of the future would still belong to the shomer. Why? Because we didn't exclude them from the original deal. In other words, there really was an acquisition before the thing was stolen. Now it's stolen, now it's gone for a year. If there's offspring, the offspring will belong to the shomer. That's the Maram Shif. The problem now that the Maram Shif brings down is what do we do with the brisa that says chutz? It doesn't fit with the second shita. There's a meforish brisa saying that you do not acquire the offspring. If it's true that you do acquire the offspring of after the Geneva, well, what is that brisa referring to? So he answers that the brisa must only be referring to the offspring that occur before the animal was stolen, not the offspring after the animal was stolen. And what's Peshat in the Gemara that says, my benayu, what's between them? And the answer is Kush de Rev Zera. It really means not just Kush de Rev Zera. It means the brisa itself, whether there's a brisa as a kasha or not. Because according to the shita that says that the offspring are acquired, it's not a kasha because the brisa itself was only talking about the offspring before. But according to the first shita, that will say that the acquisition happened from the very beginning, so the brisa will be a difficulty. The Rosh also has the same kasha as the Maram Shif. He wants to know what does the brisa mean when it says chutz according to the second shita. Since the second Shita holds you do acquire the offspring after the thing was stolen, what is the Bryce referring to? The Rosh has a different answer, though. He says that really the Bryce only fits with the first Shita. That Bryce does not stim, it doesn't line up with the second Shita. Not that he makes an akimta in the Bryce that the Bryce is only talking about before, but the Bryce actually doesn't fit. The Ritva asks a similar question and says, wait a second, the Bryce is Peshita according to the second Shita. If you hold already that the acquisition occurred only at a moment before, so of course you're not going to acquire the Gazizas and Vlados, because there were no Gazizas and Vlados. He must be learning also that the Bryce is only referring to the before the Geneva and Aveda. But the problem now is that it's Peshita. So comes along the Ritva and says, no, Adarabba. The Bryce is actually a proof for the second Shita. Why? Because since the Bryce says before we do not acquire the Gazizas and Vlados, must be the acquisition only occurred only a moment before the Geneva. And actually the Bryce lines up to be a proof for the second Shita. And this covers the sugya of the Kusha of Rav Zera.